Hello and welcome to this month's episode of the Mongrel Court. I'm your host, Agens. In this episode, we're actually doing an audience call-in, and currently nobody's put their hand up, but that's okay. We can discuss without anybody actually being here. If you guys have questions in the chat, like Blake has already put in there, feel free to ask questions. But the topic of discussion for this week's Mongrel Court is territory control. And the reason why we're looking at territory control is because of a tweet that I saw from Morphologist, and I'm just going to read it off. I'll actually link it here for you all, for those who have Twitter. I'll link it here in chat for you guys so that you can read it in your own time. It's got a lot of commentary on it. But I thought it was an interesting topic. Anyway, Morph says, when I think about what the core gameplay loop of Star Citizen should be, I think it has to be territory control. A core loop that's kept EVE going for 20 years. It's the resource sink that drives EVE's entire economy and nearly all other gameplay loops, combat or not. A Tarkov survival style loop where the objective is to collect the most powerful everything can only last so long until everyone has everything, which is why wipes are needed in such a core loop. And the thing is it's kind of interesting that Morph has brought that up, because I saw him more of a space tourist than anything else, but the irony is like Blake's question asking about, like, isn't territory control already in the game? Yeah, we've got an event for it. It's called Jumptown. Jumptown 2.0 is actually a CIG sanctioned territory control event. You go and seize the territory known as Jumptown, and you maintain control of it so that you can then harvest the resource, maize, so that you can then sell that for a profit. And I thought it was kind of strange that we saw somebody like Morphologist, a content creator that has a large following, bring this point up, like that they see that the core gameplay loop of Star Citizen, should be territory control, or has to be territory control. Which, I don't know about you guys, like, I don't see it as being the core gameplay loop. I just see it as the inevitability that will happen. Like, Star Citizen is a simulation game. It's not a proper, like MMO type game in the sense of, like, the developers have curated a lot of the content there and then they fudge, some of the stuff along. Star Citizen is supposed to be closer to a simulation, and in a simulation you create the systems, you input the parameters, and then you let the entities interact with the environment, and what happens. So territory control in my mind is just going to be an inevitability, and I just wanted to have a discussion with everybody here about it, what their thoughts are on this. What directions it can go in. Like a lot of people, when they think about territory control, they're thinking about, combat, getting into fights, two orgs fighting each other over a piece of land. But you can look at it from another perspective of trying to corner a section of the market. If you are engaging in trade, for example, and you're You know, the thing that you sell happens to be one type of power plant and you're in one type of area. You have control of that market. You control the territory for that market, for that power plant. Now, if somebody else comes in and they start trying to sell the same power plant and they try and sell a bit cheaper, your goal in, you know, mercantile trade is to try and either price match or beat, and then try and, you know, like pull the customers towards you that way. That, I think, is another interesting thought process on how territory control can happen. Alright, so Blake says, I don't think territory control will be core since there is supposedly a 9-to-1 NPC to player. What about the NPCs fighting over control? Like, you know, Xenothreat, which is running right now, is an attempt by Xenothreat to try and establish a foothold so that they can take over Stanton. Kane says, things like JT for territory control is a very good start and love it. We need more reasons for controlling a zone of interest than drugs or something we can buy to sell somewhere else though. Like what? Like that's a interesting point that people bring up, but a lot of the times it's like, my next question is, okay, well, if it's not something that you're going to sell, like why else would you want to control that territory? Like, territory control, and I actually asked ChatGPT because I googled, you know, a definition for territory control, and it was just trying to combine territory and control as two separate words. So I asked ChatGPT to give me an explanation on what territory control is. ChatGPT says, territory control refers to the process of acquiring and maintaining control over a specific geographic area. This can refer to both physical territory such as land or water, and virtual territory such as online spaces or market share in a specific industry. In the context of military or political conflicts, territory control is often a key objective as it can provide strategic advantages such as access to resources, defensive positions, or the ability to project power. In business, territory control can be important for companies looking to establish dominance in a particular market or region. Territory control can be achieved through a variety of means, including military force, negotiation, economic incentives, or legal frameworks. Once control is established, it must be maintained through ongoing efforts to defend against competitors or other threats. So that kind of goes back to the other point that I was making with regards to, you know, territory control can be more than just, you know, two groups fighting. It can be like corporate competition, you know, mercantile traders competing against each other in the same space, you know, same area with their, you know, the prices that they're charging for what they're trying to sell. Right, Kane's responded, he says, my idea is more the industrial side, having zones that have high spawn rates of minables, salvageable, lootable items in current state of the game. Okay, so well, how is that any different to Jumptown though? Like the current state of Jumptown, we have a box there that, you know, shits out, you know, we have a box machine that shits out a box. You then pick up that box, it's like harvesting. So you're looking at, you know, the mentality there of the whole, like, well, you're thinking more along the lines of like, you know, a mining area, like CIG's plan for doing the new mining mission. It's like a mining rush. But, you know, and then you got salvage, which, you know, mining and salvage are really just the same thing, just done different. In the sense that you go and find a resource, you harvest it, you then bring it back to sell. Which is what you do at Jumptown. You go to Jumptown, you harvest the boxes, you take it back somewhere and sell. It's the harvesting part that's different in amongst all of those examples there. Like mining is different to, you know, picking up boxes, which is different to salvaging a ship. But when you break it down into like, you know, game developer terms of a minimal viable product, it's you go somewhere, you acquire a, you know, asset, you then hold the area that's got a lot of those assets there to stop anybody else from taking it. And then you do something with that asset. And in this case, which, you know, for the example of Jumptown, you take it somewhere to sell it. What I think a lot of people really need to think about when they talk about territory control, in the sense of, you know, like doing other stuff other than, you know, like what Jumptown does, which is harvest boxes, is like, you know, the area that you're trying to control needs to demonstrate value. And it could be just something as simple as like, you just like the real estate, you like the area that you're in, it's got, you know, like it's picturesque, it's got nice mountains, you know, beach or whatever, and you and your org have established a, you know, player run town. It's like, this is our little slice of paradise in the verse. This is what we want. We want this space, you know, so that we can play our video game. You may be role players or whatever, and we don't want anybody trying to take that away from us. Another group could see that and go, we also like that space, but we don't want to share it with these guys, so we're now going to try and take it from them. That group that's already placed there, they're now in a state of having to control that territory to prevent competitors from taking it away from them. Like, that's another reason for, you know, like not wanting, you know, another reason for territory control without, you know, having to worry about going somewhere to take something. Well, going somewhere to take something to sell somewhere else. It's like, we want the land for the sake of the land. Alright, coming back to this. Okay, so Blake says, at Kane, we kind of have seen that with the motherland on Lyria. Some groups would mine it and kill anyone else that came looking for Quantanium. I think that's just good security at this current point in time, Blake, but it's one of those things where it's like, we're all stuck in these separate fish bowls, all the different servers that we've got going right now, right? We're all in separate fish bowls, and what we haven't seen yet is like everybody being shoved into the same fish bowl. You know, like Jumptown is literally one place on one server that everyone goes to. Go, what does that look like in terms of territory control? Like Lyria, it would be a bit more spread out, but you would see groups, you know, like jockeying, you know, vying, fighting each other for, you know, air control, you know, like miners trying to, you know, stay stealthy, trying to, you know, security groups providing buffer zones so that the miners can actually do their thing and, you know, harvest the resources and all that sort of stuff. Like, we haven't seen the evolution of territory control yet too far beyond what we get in Jumptown. Kaizaki says, think when we have a sizable galaxy, you'll follow a much deeper sim of the game, like being invaded, conquered, to evacuation of civilian resources and goods. Yeah, well, that's one of the things, like the Vandal are the invading force, you know, so we're gonna, like, CIG has put that into their lore, and we'll probably see Vandal invasions of different systems where, you know, they'll call on the CDF to go and assist the Navy, you know, in repelling or evacuating people. Outdoor Corey says, I hope they don't put in territory control. You end up with what you have in EVE, where 75% of the players can't experience all the places in the game. It won't happen soon. They can't even fix box missions. What are you talking about, mate? We've already got territory control. Jumptown's an example of it. The thing is like, territory control in Star Citizen is vastly different to what you'll get in EVE, because EVE is a player-driven economy, whereas Star Citizen is a AI-driven economy. It is controlled. The player to NPC ratio is structured in a way that players can't influence territory control significantly to the point where they would be able to, you know, take over an entire system, which I know a lot of organizations want to be able to do. But then you got to think about, like, you know, control of a territory can mean many things. Whether or not, you know, like a group can go into an area and control the territory, as in like complete total control, it's locked down, you can't go in, you know, more than likely that's not going to be the case. but you know, like players being able to influence where you can go. It's like, hey, you know, like if you want to go over here, you're going to have to pay us X amount of credits because we know about that spot. And if you don't pay us X amount of credits, we'll show up and take that, you know, wait for you to harvest the resources, we'll show up and then take it from you. And that's what a lot of people, you know, they seem to have this hard, firm stance. It's like, you know, for territory control, you must like, you know, it's like drawing a fucking box on the ground and a cat sits in it, and like whoever, you know, is inside that little box there, like they're in control of that territory. It's like control is determined on what sort of influence you can exert on someone else. You know, your entire organization could be in one system, but if you can't exert influence over somebody else, you're not in control. Jim Henson says, I guess why with so few people on a server it seems very boring and Eveshore. Well, the little tiny fishbowl we play in makes no sense unless it's Jumptown. Well, that's one of the things, like, we've actually seen most recently, and another reason why I actually wanted to talk about this particular topic is, you know, the slam rush, when fractional trading was a thing back in 3.18.0 and 0.1. The spaces, if you wanted to be able to do your trading, your drug trading, and you wanted to make sure that you guarantee that you're going to be able to do it, you needed to control two spaces. You needed to control the drug labs that had the stuff worth taking or purchasing, and then the selling point. Now, a lot of people just did it, you know, on their own, which allowed piracy to fucking flourish. You know, pirates were getting out there and they were just, you know, smashing everything that they could find when it came to, you know, bloody the slam rush, because, you know, a flock of people being concentrated in a specific area. But there was something of value that was being transported to a specific area. And, you know, it's in pirates, you know, the pirates' best interest to hang around those areas. So, is it territory control? I wouldn't say it's territory control in the exact same vein as what you experience in Jumptown, but it's territory control in the sense that you could lock down a drug lab and, you know, a salvage yard and prevent anybody else from coming in there on your specific server, and then just trade, you know, as much as you can. Just scrolling up. Alright, Blake responds, outdoor Corey, territory control and actual loss is the only reason why EVE is still going. I think it's also because a lot of people just enjoy the social aspect of the game as well. They get to play with a lot of their friends that still are interested in it. Totes McGoats. Sounds a lot like Rust. Kind of. Like any sort of survival game, when you think about it, a portion of what you're engaging in is territory control. Like you like, if you want to create a base, you need to be prepared to defend it. And the reason why you're creating a base somewhere is because there's a resource nearby that you can, you know, exploit for yourself to be able to, you know, improve your odds of surviving and continuing engaging in the gameplay. Hello, McTroximus. Warhead, territory control would be more obvious if CIG gave us a reason to care. Resource management could change everything. It's an interesting point. Realistically, like, I don't think CIG needs to give us a reason to care about, you know, going somewhere to control a territory beyond, you know, like it being valuable. Like, Jumptown, when it first, like the organic Jumptown came about because you had the drug trade. You had a valuable resource that you could harvest, but you had to invest in that, you know, crop. So you'd invest in the crop, harvest, and then take it to sell. And whoever had that, you know, like territory, like Jumptown, if you held Jumptown, you could do it as much as you wanted without, you know, contest. Other groups would want to be able to do that, so they would come in and contest you. And if you won, you got to maintain, control of the territory. If you lost, then you had to bloody recuperate from your loss, and then make a decision if you're going to go back there or do something else. And that, like, why did anybody do it? Especially during Jumptown, the first one, where, it was 3.4. You couldn't fucking even buy ships then. Nobody really cared. It was for the credits, and it's like, well, what do you need credits for at that point? Because I want credits, I like to make the number bigger in my wallet, whatever. Really, it just comes down to, a self-driven objective. Like, why do you consider that valuable enough to, plonk yourself down and go, this is my space? Yeah, coming down to what Kane is saying here. Once and if most players are on one server, as we get more systems added in as well and see players spread, the territory control will then evolve again, right? Yeah, like there's going to be a certain aspect of player driven, territory control gameplay. For whatever reason, as I said before in my first example, once we can start building like player towns, player structures and things like that, an organization may just like, they find a piece of land, it's out in the middle of, like, nullsec for a lack of a better term. So there's no UEE around. They find a nice little plot of land, they start building their own little town because they like the scenery. They build up a little hub, they start, like, making something of it, little town, trade and all that sort of stuff's going off, and another group goes, hey, we like that, what they're doing right there, we want to take it from them, we want, that piece of land because it also looks good. They come in and try and take it. That's territory, you're contesting territory right there. And there's no resource, involved really. It's one group just likes being there, the other one wants to take it from them because they also want to be there because they see value. That's one of the things that I think territory control really people need to understand about territory control is like it comes down to value. What do you value in that specific area? Just catching up on what's going on in chat here. Adrian, it's a audience call-in today. So if you're on Gilded, there's a channel, I pinged everybody in it on the Mongrel Squad public Gilded server. If you react to that with the wave emote, I can get you set up so that you can jump on stream. You don't have to, you can interact through the chat though, like that's fine, I'll talk with you guys that way. Blake, CIG hasn't talked about territory control that much. A lot of what we're talking about is still subjective, and realistically, when we're talking about, territory control, we've got better examples in other games than what we do in Star Citizen, but you do kind of have some examples there. I believe there's a misconception amongst a lot of people when it comes to video games and territory control that they're expecting to see like a user interface pop up, hey, you're taking control of this space, kind of like a capture the flag type scenario, whereas territory control doesn't need that at all. You just need to see value in a specific area, and I see value in this area, I'm going to take control of it, I'll sit myself down there, that's my little spot. If somebody wants to try and take it away from you, you need to control that, territory, so you got to be able to, fight them off. Yeah, Warhead, money only motivates so far. Hopefully resource scarcity will drive that. But what, like, Warhead, when you say resource scarcity, like, resources being scarce makes sense to a certain point, but money is a resource. If you're after specific resources, there's a reason for that. Normally, it's to take that resource, convert it into something more useful, and then it's very rare nowadays that you use it for yourself. Normally, you sell it to someone else. So, like, why do you say that resource scarcity, would hopefully drive territory control that is beyond money? Or are you talking about the point, with regards to just making the numbers in your wallet get bigger? Is that what you mean? Because that in a way, a roundabout way, is what Jumptown is about, like resource scarcity. You can't get maize any other time, any other way. The only way that you can get maize is by going to Jumptown when it's running and wait for a fucking box to wait for a bloody box to shit out a box. Cypherdex, Brios has been in the community flirting with the idea recently, it seems. Yeah, well, it's a destination point that has value. Like, that's where you go to sell drugs. It's the best place to sell drugs. Well, back when fractional trading was a thing. It's kind of lost its, appeal since the drug trade isn't that great anymore. Jack's asking, so what be the point of land claims they got back in the days? Are they worth it? Yes, they are. If you plan on settling in UEE space, they are definitely worth it, because those land claims are for plots of land on planets that the UEE designates as areas that you can buy land in. And the benefit of doing that in UEE space is that you can have the UEE and security forces respond if you get attacked. That's all still the theorycraft side of things. When CIG finally gets to that point, they'll detail it. Blake says, New World type territory control can be fun, but it doesn't suit Star Citizen. Not familiar with New World's territory control gameplay. You might have to explain that a little bit for me. But I don't want to get an automatic tax. I want to have to enforce my tax collection. I think there's going to have to be a little bit of automation involved if you wanted to do tax collection on an area, because enforcing it, like, it's a job in real life. Like, there are tax agents, whose job is to enforce tax laws. And I don't know, like, how many players want to spend all that time. Maybe it could be something that you can assign to an NPC. It becomes an AI job, and the AI goes around and, like, security in game right now, and Prodigy goes, hey, have you paid your taxes? I'm here to collect the taxes for such and such. Cypherdeck says they only need to have some rotation of high value goods being available with no armistice zones or changing areas. Yeah, like, I actually made a post on Spectrum. Pretty sure you would have seen it. There was a post on Spectrum that I made. I don't know how many of you guys would have seen it. I'm going to bring it up for you. It was a petition to CIG, and this was based on the realization that we're in the middle of a slam rush, or a commodity rush, similar to what we had experienced with Jumptown. I'll link it in chat for you guys. Have a read of it when you're ready, or when you feel like it. But the point that I was getting at there is, like, you're literally recreating a Jumptown through a bug. Jumptown came about because of a bug. we had the Laranite Rush in 3.9. That came about because of a bug. And now we've got the Slam Rush, or we had the Slam Rush in 3.18, which came about because of a bug. And all it was that there was abundance, a high supply of a certain resource, a high demand for that same resource, and it was valuable. Like, you can make a lot from it really quickly. And that was it. The thing about that is that if CIG could replicate that, and they tried to with Jumptown and they missed the mark. As far as I'm concerned, they missed the mark because the only thing that you're investing is time with the new Jumptown. And if you're playing a game that's still in alpha, I'm not going to say that you don't value your time that much, but you're more willing to throw away your entertainment time to play something that's broken, not finished, and may not be as entertaining as a fully complete game. That's not to say that Star Citizen can't be entertaining, it's just, yeah, look at the launch of 3.18. We all tried logging in, we all tried playing it, and we kept going until it was playable. So, yeah, we're willing to throw away a lot more of our time in the pursuit of a form of entertainment. And that's one of the things that, you know, like, you kind of have to understand about making a game type loop based on, you know, like, you just sitting around waiting for a box to come out of a, you know, chute, and it happens every 30 seconds. It's like, okay, cool. Well, you know, I'm more than willing to sit there and, you know, wait that long, because I fucking, you know, had to wait 2 minutes just for an ASOP terminal to work. So waiting for a box, this is just par for the course. And that's why there needs to be more investment, because players don't feel that sense of loss as well. They don't feel the need to defend. They don't feel like a sense of risk being actually taken, because they're willing to throw their time away. Blake says, it would be nice if we had a scarce resource in the game we could use for something else. Hopefully when we get crafting, it becomes more like that. Well, that's the thing, is like, we're kind of missing the next, you know, tier of trade, or the next tier of, you know, like, refining or manufacturing. Essentially, we're missing manufacturing. We've got mining, we've got refining, and now we need to take that refined material and turn it into something useful. Like right now, the idea is that you take it to a TDD, the refined stuff to a TDD, sell it to them, and then, you know, it magically gets to a manufacturer and they turn it into something useful. Whereas for us, you know, like the manufacturing side of things, you know, taking that refined material somewhere to turn it into, you know, something like a power plant, and then, you know, buying a whole bunch of power plants and, you know, moving them somewhere else to sell. That said though, in 3.19, you could actually start seeing that happening, purely because we're going to be able to remove, you know, ship components and, you know, store them. So when you look at it that way, we'll kind of have in a roundabout way, you know, the ability to do the next level of, you know, trade, which is moving manufactured goods, you know, to sell somewhere else. I've always, you know, what I would like to see happen at a place like Grimhex, for example, is Grimhex doesn't have all of the best stuff, but what would be nice is that, you know, there are some enterprising, you know, mercantile type players who go around and they buy in bulk all these items, you know, like these, let's go with Atlas quantum drives, for example. One player decides to go and buy 100 of them. They go to Hurl 5, buy 100, take it over to Grimhex, and they're just selling them out of the back of the spaceship. Like, you can go to Hurl 5 and pay, you know, like 20,000 credits to go and buy it from them, or buy it from the shop there. Or if you're at Grimhex and you're already there, you can just pay 30,000. You pay 30,000 credits and you got it right there. And then you know what happens? And now we're going into the area of territory control. Another trader starts doing the exact same thing, and they're selling theirs for 29,000. So then you see these two trying to compete with each other on prices. They try and sweeten it a little bit, you know, trying to control the area because they both operate out of Grimhex. They may be on different servers, but you know, they could end up on the same server at one point. And then they can start doing, you know, other things. And this is, you know, where I get into corporate privateering. One of the things that I want to do with Mongrel Squad, where one of those mercs, you know, mercantile traders are going, hey, buddy, Agens, take you, you know, I'll pay you X amount of credits to go, you know, hit this guy's shipment. I know when it's happening. You know, it's on this server at this time, this place, from here to here. You know, hit the shipment, bring it to me, and you know, like, I'll buy it off you for X amount of credits. And right there, you've got like emergent gameplay with territory control happening, you know, within a small circle. You know, that's encouraging, you know, a more expansive gameplay, whilst also, you know, like involving a lot more people outside of the direct sphere of influence of, you know, like the two groups that are engaging in the trade, or this little trade war that's happening between the two of them. The original Jumptown was more or less about just going somewhere to a central point and just, you know, fighting. And the main reason why it became so popular was because it was the first time where you could go somewhere without having to make some declaration and hope that somebody shows up. Because before Jumptown, you know, when we had the baby PU, so you're looking at the 2.0, you know, from 2.0 to 2.6 days. The place to go if you wanted to go have dogfights in the persistent universe back in the baby PU, you go to SBK and then you declare that you locked it down. And then whoever wanted to show up and fight you would show up and fight you. And there wasn't much to do in the baby PU. You had Tessa Bannister's missions, and then it was just fly around. Yeah, that was really about it. You know, go and look at the fucking, you know, rest stops, Acry Astros, and go to SPK, see what you can find there. But that's the thing, that is that you could go to SPK, make a declaration, get into a dogfight, you know, have, you know, some excitement, a bit of fun, and that would be it. Wouldn't matter. That right there is a very rudimentary form of territory control. We've taken and seized security post Korea because we wanted to. You know, the value is there that we own a security outpost. Cool. You know, that's our outpost. Somebody else is like, hey, I want to, you know, I want that outpost. I'm going to go and try and take it from these guys. So they show up, you have a fight. Yeah, whoever wins, wins and takes control of the security outpost. Now, you had to make that declaration. Nobody would know that you were there. And the chances of finding a group that was just camping security, you know, SPK was pretty rare. Like, you had to make the declaration so that you could draw fights to you. Whereas Jumptown, the first one, the organic one, was kind of the first instance where we saw PvP being drawn into a singular location where no declarations had to be made and anybody could just go there. And you had a pretty good chance of finding somebody worth fighting because of this glitch with drug trading. And because of that glitch, we had a lot of people going there. So, you know, if you wanted to go fight other people, you knew you could go to Jumptown and get into a fight. And that started drawing all the PvPers together. And that's what, like, that's how Jumptown really came about and really became really popular, is that a lot of PvPers started going there because they're like, well, I can get into fights. And, you know, people who wanted to make a lot of credits were like, well, you know, I'm going to have to make sure that I'm, you know, decked out to fight these guys. So they'd bring other friends and it would just turn into, you know, these huge space battles over a fucking drug lab. And it doesn't need to be more complex than that. And that's what, you know, the point that I was making in the Spectrum post that I linked is that you don't need to make this complex. You know, like, Put something somewhere that people find valuable. Let them find it on their own. Word of mouth gets around, and they will, limit how much of that, valuable thing is, and watch them fight over. It's like putting a piece of food between two different ant, hills, and watching the ants come down and try and, take the food and then end up fighting each other for it. Just scrolling back up. Cypherdeck says, if they did something as simple as make the scrapyards buy goods at premium to incentivize a territory control type situation. Well, they do. I wouldn't say that they buy it at a premium, but you can only sell certain items to them. That's one of the reasons why, like, the Slam Rush actually was as successful as it was, because the best places to go sell, Slam, Widow, Neon, and Etam was at the scrapyards. It had the demand that could keep up with the supply. It paid well, and everybody could go to it. It wasn't gated behind anything other than the gates that you create as a group. Right, Adrian Clark asks, the chat's moving faster than what I'm reacting, but yeah. Adrian Clark asks, do you think more systems and actual NPC trade routes that we as players will be able to disrupt trade routes and cause issues for certain players or even whole systems? Or do you think with more systems and actual NPC trade routes that we as players will be able to disrupt trade routes and cause issues for certain planets or even whole systems? COG has actually talked about that. I don't think we'll be able to exert much influence over an entire system unless you're able to unless that system has a single point of entry. At which point you can concentrate your entire forces on the choke point. So, like, I know people keep talking about gate camping and things like that for the jump points. CIG's already spoken about that to a little degree, and they're pretty much of the mindset that that's not going to be a thing. They will make sure that it's not. How? I have no idea. But they are aware of that issue and they don't want it to be an issue. But being able to disrupt trade routes, kind of. Like, I think what you'd see is that, like pirates, for example, if you had a piracy organization concentrate enough on trade from one system to another, and they were targeting a specific commodity, and they did it frequently enough, because it's more about frequency. It's frequency and duration that really starts making an impact on prices of commodities. If you're trying to disrupt the flow of commodity goods. So if you're doing that, then yeah, you would be able to influence it, but I wouldn't say it would be for very long, because Quantum, the AI simulation, would start picking up on that. And if those goods are desperately needed, like, for example, medical supplies or, processed food going into a brand new system which has a lot of colonies there that haven't been able to get their own crops and that going yet, so they have to import a lot of their food. It's a UEE endeavor, and pirates are like, well, if we steal all this food, then we go to that same colony, we can then sell the food at a higher premium to them and make even more credits. Well, if that happens too much and not enough food's getting to those colonies, the UEE then looks at stepping in. So would you be able to disrupt it? Yes, you would be able to exert a small amount of influence, and the game would probably try and push back. But, like, Star Citizen is supposed to have conflict in it. So it's not going to be, you know, a perfect system where it's like the AI just immediately step in and stomp on anything that ruins the balance of what's going on. They're going to, you know, CIG is going to let the balance tip, you know, in different directions at certain points. You know, it's going to be, criminals are going to be allowed to flourish for, you know, a period of time. And then they'll, you know, then security all of a sudden just starts stomping, you know, comes in. If it's, you know, too prolific and too impactful, then security would come in and just stomp on it. And it may actually swing the complete opposite direction, where it's like the system, you know, becomes extremely strict and you can't, you know, do anything without, you know, you can't scratch your ass without, you know, somebody tapping you on the shoulder telling you that you're doing something indecent. Alright. Just coming down. Yeah, Baron, the stream's been going for a bit now, man. We're at 50 minutes, holy shit. Probably rearrange these screens a bit. All right. Greedy says, I really like that CIG removed mostly the nuggets and are replacing with the buy mission. This actually makes it possible to sell Rex to players, which is amazing. Yeah, well, it makes sense. Like, it kind of leads into, and I've talked about this before with regards to insurance companies. You know, insurance taking control of whatever's left of the wreckage of your ship, and they're trying to extract as much value as they can from it. So they're like, all right, we'll sell it to salvagers. Makes the most amount of sense to me, and it actually starts making sure that you know, players are considering, you know, like how they're actually going out there and, you know, playing the game. You know, give salvagers a bit more purpose. So instead of spending, you know, an hour looking for wreckage worth salvaging, they can buy the location and just go straight there, engage in the gameplay, do the loop, and then leave. So instead of, you know, a salvaging, you know, gameplay session taking, you know, an hour to 2 hours, it could be done in, you know, half an hour. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a big win for players overall. Cypherdex says, right, but if they started buying legal goods at high prices, would bring PvE traders to the yards. Maybe. Like, there's nothing wrong with trying to hit those PvE traders, you know, en route. So there's going to be a couple of events that will be coming up. One of them is going to be Ninetales Lockdown, which is going to be fucking amazing with physicalized cargo, because it's medical supplies. You can't really hit the target at the end point. You can try and intercept them when they finally arrive at, you know, the rest stop. When they're trying to, you know, when they're making their 300-kilometer dash from when they get interdicted and pulled out of quantum travel to when they get to the rest stop itself. Or you can hit them at the start point, just after they've bought the cargo. They buy the cargo, you wait until they're starting to leave, you then pounce on them there, disable, board, seize, you know, and then transport the stuff for yourself. Or you can hit them en route. set yourself up along the quantum travel line that they're going to be taking, put up a snare. If you do it right, you're going to snare them. Pull them out in the middle of dead space and cap them there. No crime stats. Really hard for anybody to get to you there. And that's one of the things is like, the salvage yard makes it convenient because you can sit there and you can set up an ambush and you can just wait. But not all cargo hauling is going to be done like that. And this is one of those skill sets that pirates need to develop, is being able to snare targets on route to from one buy location to the sell location. And if you master that, you don't need to worry about the sell location being an armistice zone or not. You can hit them on route. You just need to be able to, you know, master that skill. You want to do a Dragonfly biker gang at Brio's? Fucking do it, man. That'd be cool. Like, I've talked about that, you know, like having biker gangs and stuff like that. When I saw the hover bikes for the first time, I'm like, fuck, maybe I should make Mongrel Squad a fucking biker organization. But then there's the Mongrel Mob, which is a criminal gang that I don't know if they're a biker group. Maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it kind of leans closer to a bikie group, in the sense that they all wear cuts. So kind of moved away from that idea. Yeah, Adrian. Yeah, Brios has been phenomenal for that. You know, even just being able to do solo piracy there, it's actually made it a lot more viable for players to engage in. Blake says, speaking of the salvage missions, I think CIG is making it explicit that they want territory control battles to happen over salvage in 319. We'll have to wait and see. Really, like, they have said that they do want, you know, the types of missions where it's like one player is like, hey, go here and, you know, you can go here to pick up this box, and then, you know, another mission giver goes, hey, there's this box here that we really want and we're going to pay a lot more for it, and if somebody else has got it, just take it from them. So, you know, like, I don't imagine that salvage would be any different in that regard. Because really, it's just, you know, all you need is a place to be at. Just a marker. Go here. Here's the resource. Here's the valuable asset, item, whatever. And, you know, go and take it for yourself and, you know, exploit the value for it. Warhead says, capital ships will be territory to control when boarding acts come into play. 100%. You know, like, defend the engine room, defend the power plants, defend the life support, defend the bridge, defend the battle bridge. You know, like, that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to working out when capital ships become a thing in Star Citizen, is like, okay, what parts of the ship do we need to seize in order to take control of the ship? Rough Riders asks, how will you be able to set up quantum interdictions on route when orbital mechanics are brought in? The CIG has never stated that they will bring in orbital mechanics. In fact, they've said that they probably won't do it because it's too complex for them to do because of not because of quantum interdiction, but because of quantum travel. But here's the thing, is that if you can set up quantum travel from one point to another, then you can calculate where, you know, that same route and then work out where to hit that person as well. So it's not that it's impossible, it's that it's not supported yet. And I do have a couple of theories on how we would do it, but realistically, CIG just needs to implement user interface support for quantum interdiction mechanics so that it's a lot more user friendly, because that's been a huge hurdle for quantum snaring. A lot of people early on when the Mantis was first introduced said it was broken, and it wasn't. It was working perfectly fine, they just didn't know how to use it, and they weren't willing to work it out. That's one of the things that, you know, it's a video game thing where, you know, we're all taught when we're playing a video game, you know, from early on, this is how you do something, and they'll show you how to do it. Whereas we got this piece of kit and we were told, yep, it can do this, and that was it. Work it out. Like the Mantis, from when it first was released to where we've got it now, hasn't changed that much for its quantum interdiction mechanics. Well, it's definitely possible. Like, if you look at, you know, like what NASA does when it comes to sending, you know, rovers, probes, and stuff like that. Like, they have to predict far ahead in the future, but they can do it. They can send a fucking satellite from, you know, Earth to Mars and have it land in a specific area that they want it to go to. If they can do it, we've got then the data and the calculations to then, you know, make it a thing in Star Citizen. Whether or not CIG wants to do it is another thing. All right. So, we've been discussing territory control and or whether or not it's a core gameplay loop in Star Citizen, or whether or not it should be. The topic for the discussion was territory control type gameplay within Star Citizen, which we've been talking about, and what you think CIG needs to do to make this a reality, which we've all been talking about to a certain degree in different formats. This is something that I thought a lot more people would want to call in and talk about, but seeing that a lot of you aren't that confident in talking about, that's okay. It's one of those things where it's like, CIG hasn't really spoken much about it, even though they've got examples in their own game. And a lot of people have the mentality that there's supposed to be a user interface. Because a lot of people just think of, like, you know, wars like in EVE Online. You know, there needs to be a declaration, there are groups holding territory and they have to put a station down, and, you know, that means that they're owning this, you know, system and all that sort of stuff. It's, you know, you don't need to have all that in order to make that work. We've already talked about examples of, you know, like just cornering the market on bloody quantum drives for fighters, or, you know, for size 1 craft. You know, get size 1 quantum drives, buy a bunch of Atlases and go to Grim Hex, and you're the guy that sells Atlas quantum drives at Grim Hex. You know, that's you controlling the territory of Grim Hex through, you know, quantum drives. You sell the quantum drives that everybody wants. And that's the thing, is that it's a very, you know, like, obscure example, but people don't consider that type of thing until somebody does it. But at the same time, a lot of, you know, a lot of people are also waiting for it to be more viable. Like, doing it now, you're more doing it for the gameplay as opposed to, you know, like trying to, you know, leverage it as proper territory control, or leverage it as a marketing opportunity, a economic opportunity that it would present. Because that's what it really would be, is it would be an economic opportunity. You know, in server meshing, fuck. Like, in server, when we get server meshing, like server meshing, the impact that server meshing will have when it comes to territory control, I don't think a lot of people are ready for yet. I don't think a lot of people are ready for it because, you know, they reference EVE Online and its war system, and, you know, like, was it corporations locking down systems and not letting people through? It's like, well, that's kind of how territory control works. But it works there because they're all in the same, you know, shard. You know, they're all in the same universe. We're not in that position yet. You know, you get small glimpses of it if you end up in a, you know, server where Jumptown's running and there's an organization that's locked Jumptown down. But you can just switch server regions. You can just switch servers, and, you know, you can then access Jumptown on the next server. Server meshing takes that option away. That's the only Jumptown. If you want to go see it, then you need to go through the group that's there. And if you're not willing to, you know, comply with what they want, if they're even bothering with demands, because they may just be like, nah, fuck everyone, we're not letting you in, then, you know, guess what? You don't get to access it. And that's kind of how territory control works. And a lot of players just aren't ready for that. Primarily because they're expecting some sort of fucking user interface. They're expecting to see that, you know, like, oh, I can't go to Jumptown, so they don't go there. As opposed to them going, oh, I'm going to go to Jumptown today. They go there, they find out when they get there that, hey, it's locked down. Adrian Clark says, haven't they said they're trying to do most of the game without server meshing first now? I wouldn't know about that. I think it's more they're trying to get the minimal viable product sorted out without server meshing. Because realistically, you shouldn't need server meshing for that. Alright. Honestly, I think on the subject of territory control, I think we've actually covered a lot of the points here. I don't think there's really been much more that we can go on about it, other than it's already something that we've got. Like, it's already happening in Star Citizen. There just needs to be something valuable enough for people to go and lock it down. How long have we been going for? The PO lockdowns? Well, I know about Cryastro. I didn't know PO was getting locked down. Like, Port Olisar getting locked down kind of happened. I know we did it a couple of times. But yeah, I thought it was interesting, like Morphologist's tweet, you know, saying that the core gameplay loop of Star Citizen should be territory control. Well, he thinks that it should be territory control. My thought on it is that it's just going to happen. It won't be along the same lines as what players think of when it comes to like games like EVE Online. It will vary from very small, you know, examples like, you know, an quantum drive trader at Grimhex trying to lock down the market there, all the way through to, you know, like organizations trying to lock down valuable resource, you know, fields to harvest. And that's the thing, is that we've got examples of it already happening, and really players just need to look for the opportunities more. Well, that's the thing, Adrian. It's Star Citizen's core gameplay loop is you play the character that you want in their universe, and that's it. It's a theme park. You know, from a certain perspective, you go find the ride that you want to get on, and you ride that ride until it's done, and then you go find the next ride. That's a better mentality to think of with Star Citizen. You know, like, you're in the theme park, and then you go and jump on the different rides that are there, and, you know, enjoy it. And the thing is that mentality right there, when players start thinking about Star Citizen like that, they'll start realizing that there's a lot more potential. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are kind of missing out right now. You know, like, they're expecting CIG to keep spoon feeding them the content that, you know, spoon feeding them content. Hey, you know, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And it's like, just create the conditions and allow us to be able to engage in the gameplay. You know, create the rides, we'll choose which ones we want to ride. Anyway, I think we're starting to loop around a lot too now with what we're talking about with territory control. So I'm going to call it there on the Mongrel Court. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along for the Mongrel Court. It was a bit of a short one this time around, but it was a discussion that I really wanted to have because I thought it was interesting, and we kind of had a recent example of it, and I think a lot of the community didn't actually realize. So yeah, territory control, it's happening already. It's not going to be a core gameplay loop, but it's going to definitely be a huge driver of gameplay opportunities within Star Citizen. Thank you all very much for coming along. The next Mongrel Court will be around the 3rd Saturday of May, which will be roughly the 21st, or correction, the 20th of May. That's when I'll be aiming for the next Mongrel Court. What I'll probably do is I'll aim to get a panel together this time and go back to the older format so that we have a group of people to have a discussion, so you're not just staring at a talking head. Whilst I do like talking and having a chat with you guys directly in the chat there, it gets a bit lonely not having other people having voices there. Plus, it's a bit much on my own bloody voice, really. Talking this much for this long. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you all coming along, and I'll catch you all next time when court is in session.